It was a quiet evening in Charlotte County, Florida, November 14th, 2023, when a frantic 911 call came in from a trembling teenage voice. "My mom's bleeding out. She fell on a knife. Please help." The caller was 16-year-old Colin Griffith, and on the other end of the line, dispatchers could hear sheer panic, but also confusion. His tone flickered between desperation and disbelief. The operator tried to guide him through CPR as he counted out loud, pressing down on his mother's chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But with each compression, the life drained from her body. By the time first responders arrived, 39-year-old Kathy Griffith was gone. A large kitchen knife lay nearby, drenched in blood. Colin, the same son who had just begged dispatchers to save her, was now sitting on the kitchen floor, shaking and covered in red. To understand how this tragedy happened, how a teenage boy went from victim to killer, we need to rewind. Because this wasn't just a moment of rage. This was a story that had been spiraling out of control for years. Just 2 months earlier, in September 2023, police were already familiar with the Griffith family. Colin had told teachers that his mother pulled a gun on him that morning and threatened to kill him. Deputies raced to the house. Kathy laughed it off, said her son was lying because she'd grounded him for failing a test. To them, she seemed calm, composed, even reasonable. So they believed her. Colin, meanwhile, stuck to his story. She had pulled a gun. When no action was taken, Colin made a chilling statement. "If she tries something again, I'll defend myself." That one sentence was enough to raise red flags. Under Florida's Baker Act, Colin was taken to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. 3 days later, he was released, but he immediately began making new threats. He said he'd done it before and would do it again, and mentioned stabbing or shooting his mom and grandmother. So once again, he was taken away. Colin's grandmother, Susan, was doing everything she could to keep the peace. She'd let Colin stay at her home whenever things with Kathy got bad. But every time he went back, the same pattern repeated. Arguments, fights, police visits. On November 13th, the night before Kathy's death, things exploded again. Kathy told deputies her son had attacked her over a confiscated phone. Colin told them she attacked him. The officers noticed something. Colin didn't have a mark on his body. Kathy, on the other hand, had visible bruises and a swollen hand. Still, she refused to give up on him. Even as Colin sat in the back of a police car, handcuffed, his grandmother warned him, "You've got to get your anger under control." And Colin replied, "Without hesitation, I think my anger's fine." That night, Colin called one of the deputies from the back of the cruiser. He spoke about something strange, two versions of himself. Colin One is good, he wants to help people. Colin Two protects him. Colin Two was the one that killed someone. The officer froze. Killed someone? You see, earlier that year in Oklahoma, Colin had shot and killed his father. He said it was self-defense after his dad came at him with a knife. The court eventually dropped the charges, but this was a boy who had already taken a life once before. Even the officer arresting him said, "If she hits you again, what do you think you'll do?" And Colin answered quietly, "I might hit her back. Really hard. Maybe too hard." Those words would echo in investigators' minds for months. The next morning, November 14th, Colin went before a judge for that domestic battery charge. The judge released him on probation. Kathy, against everyone's advice, was waiting outside to take him home. A detective even pulled her aside, warning her that bringing Colin home was dangerous. But Kathy said something that stunned everyone. "If it means I get to spend more time with my son, I'm willing to accept my fate." Moments later, as they drove away together, an officer from the detention center called 911. Colin, before getting in the car, had just said, "If I go home, she's gonna die." Later that same day, police returned to the Griffith home. When they arrived, Colin was doing disciplinary marches with weights above his head, punishment from his mother after another argument. When asked if he'd threatened her, Colin denied it. "She thinks I'm a psychopath, that I'm gonna kill her, but I'm not. I just don't want to be attacked anymore." The officers didn't take chances. They Baker acted him again, and for the third time. As they escorted Colin to the cruiser, Kathy stormed outside, yelling at her son through tears. "Did you tell them you were going to kill me?" To the deputies, it was just another volatile day in the Griffith household. But to Kathy, It was the beginning of the end. For a while, things seemed to calm down. Colin was placed under a shared custody agreement between Kathy and his grandmother Susan. He could stay with either one. In 2024, he graduated high school, got a job at Domino's, and even received a car, which, ironically, Kathy bought using his own trust fund money. They even took a trip to Washington, D.C. together that summer. Photos showed them smiling at the White House gates. From the outside, they looked happy. But behind those smiles, something was still wrong. In September 2024, Kathy texted a friend, "I'm going into that dark place again." The night before the murder, an argument broke out over something small on a bookshelf. Kathy kicked Colin out and locked the door behind him. He drove to Susan's house to cool off. Kathy was furious. She called Susan over and over, demanding her son be brought home. "If he's not here by 10 a.m., I'm calling the cops," she screamed in one voicemail. She even threatened to sell his car, and then sent Colin a chilling text message. "I have recordings of you admitting to planning your father's murder. If you don't call me in 10 minutes, I'm sending them to everyone." This was no longer just anger. It was blackmail. Kathy got in her car and drove straight to Susan's house. Neighbors saw Kathy pull up fast, slam the door, and storm toward the front entrance. She was yelling, emotional, shaking. Moments later, they saw Colin pull her inside by her hair. One neighbor heard Kathy shouting, "Let go of my hair. You're hurting me." Then silence. An hour later, Colin's panicked 911 call came in. "My mom's bleeding. She fell on a knife." When officers arrived, they found Kathy on the kitchen floor, dead. Colin was covered in blood, performing CPR, whispering, "Mom, please don't die." A large knife lay nearby. Colin was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The case shook Florida. He was only 17. The prosecutor painted him as a cold-blooded killer, someone who had planned this for months. They even played his earlier phone call where he admitted, "Colin Two killed someone." They couldn't legally say he was referring to his father, but everyone in the courtroom knew. The defense told a different story. Colin acted in self-defense. They described Kathy as volatile, abusive, and mentally unstable, a woman who had once pinned an ex-husband with her car, stabbed him with a corkscrew, and pulled a gun on her own son. Kathy's own mother, Susan, testified for Colin. She said Kathy was unpredictable and violent. She loved her son, Susan said, but she was broken. She needed help that never came. After a long, emotional trial, the jury deliberated for 12 hours. Then the courtroom went silent as the judge read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." Colin Griffith, the boy who called 911 as his mother bled out, walked out of jail a free man. To this day, the case divides people. Some believe he was a victim who finally snapped. Others see a manipulative teen who knew exactly what he was doing. But one thing is certain. The system saw every warning sign. And even after 3 interventions, therapy, and police visits, no one could stop what was coming. Sometimes tragedy doesn't strike out of nowhere. Sometimes it builds slowly, warning after warning, until one final, irreversible moment. And in this case, both mother and son saw it coming.